Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Strip by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi on stage. I am a digital content creator, so I have an OnlyFans. I do some online sex work, making videos, photos, all that fun stuff. I am also a former sugar baby and stripper. And before I said former stripper more than a few episodes ago, but I've just started dancing on stage again, which has been really fun. That's just a little bit about me. Of course, the show is not about me, so I want to introduce everyone to this week's guest. I am bringing the Hedanista onto the show today, and this whole episode is going to be talking about harassment, about stalking, about how you can protect yourself, protect your identity, all this interesting stuff that we as sex workers need to know. So I know that the Hedanista has been sitting quietly here. Are you there?
I am here.
Yay! I am so glad that we are finally able to connect and I could bring you on the show to do an episode because we've connected. We've been like Instagram friends for how long now?
I believe I initially connected with you almost 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. So,
and a lot of stuff has happened, in the world at large and in Vancouver and in our community as well. So,
yes.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff going on. So, I want you to tell the audience who you are, what you do, in your own words, on your own terms, and go.
Wow. No pressure whatsoever. Go.
Take the mic.
So I have been in the adult entertainment industry or sex work industry. I put both of them out there because some people find that the sanitized version of adult entertainment is easier to hear or listen to. And I think a lot of people need to be validated that if that's how you would like to see what we do, then feel free to see it that way.
Totally.
So I've been in this industry for 7 years. I'm going into my 8th year this May.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm a BC girl.
Yay.
Yes, I know. Born here, come from immigrant parents, very religious immigrant parents, actually, and
fun.
was raised here in a very kind of conservative, almost pseudo cult-ish, I will say, German Baptist situation, at least for the first 5 or 6 years of my life. I'm the eldest of 5 kids. Yeah, I had a very interesting, very conservative, small town, religious first few years of my life. And I think part of what has made me search for liberal, open-minded spaces and things to do with my life, which has eventually led me to where I am now, was that kind of conservative upbringing. So that's where I came from. And obviously all of us have a really long, complex story with a lot of details in between that could fill a couple books.
Yes.
But that to me is relevant because I do see it as one of the pivotal things that made me realize that I was a little bit different in the sense that I didn't want that kind of conservative life. I was the church-going type. I was that little girl that when you took me to church on Sunday and they were singing the hymns and everyone was standing in perfectly straight rows, I would get up and try to dance at the back of the church, right? I did not fit in from day one. And of course, in a very conservative Baptist religion or setting, dancing is not even acceptable, right? That's immediately seen as, oh, the devil's in her kind of thing. And while I never had that said directly to my face, I know that there were instances where my parents were certainly approached by people in the church.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so
fun.
It's interesting, too, now being an adult and hearing some of these stories and looking back, and it's like, no, I really never fit in, and I really was never going to be held down or litude by that kind of a mindset or that kind of a box, right? So,
yeah.
That really, as, matured, went through high school, did all that fun stuff, went to university, and it it was interesting to me that through my entire journey, I was always searching for more ways to be more open and find people who were more open. And when I came into my kind of sexual maturity and sexual own, I suppose, I realized automatically that I was very much drawn to, particularly in this case, older men. And I started dating significantly older men at 18. I think I was dating someone who was 30, which that's questionable, you know.
Yes, but, you and I have a lot in common.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because it just makes sense when you're in that sexual prime and you're having all of these epiphanies sexually and you're putting the pieces together. And as a woman, not to generalize, but to generalize, always exceptions to the rule, we generally tend to be a little bit more emotionally adult earlier on. So looking for an older man who's kind of had some experience and has gained a little bit of that maturity and is maybe able to, exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's so true. Absolutely. Like I had a very similar early dating life, or early. It was the majority of my life, let's be honest, of being attracted to really, really, really older, wealthy men, just because I thought that was like, oh, that's powerful. And then, of course, them introducing me to things and a different kind of world. And I don't want to detract the conversation away from you. So back to you.
No. And you hit on a really good point, because that is essentially where I was going. Is a big part of what I was looking for was someone who had the things that I wanted.
Yes.
Even if I didn't know exactly what that was, seeing someone that had wealth and had a sense of stability and was able to do what they wanted and had that freedom was a snapshot into how I wanted my life to be. And realizing, I think initially it was subconscious. It's not like I woke up one day and was like, "Ooh, I have this power of my pussy," you know?
Yeah.
But it was certainly a unconscious epiphany that my company, my attention certainly gave these older, wealthier men something that they wanted or craved or needed. And I was also getting, in a sense at that time, because I wasn't doing it professionally, I was getting what I wanted, which was a glimpse into this world of mine, right? I was able to kind of, touch the glass ceiling, so to speak. So
totally,
I think that that's a great, that's essentially why I was given the opportunity to be introduced to what would eventually become sex work, right?
Okay.
And as I kind of matured and went through university, got some education, I always came back to the fact that, I'm really good at dating. Like, really good. I can make such a good impression on a first date. I can read somebody.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I a narcissist? Am I a sociopath? Because I will make a date or I will meet someone and I'm really good at making this first impression. And I was very aware of not necessarily just wanting to please, but wanting to be able to offer something productive or useful to this individual, because I knew that I wanted something from them in most cases, or wanted to find if there was. At the time, wasn't 100% sure what that meant or what that looked like. I just knew that maybe there was something there. And the idea of parlaying that into a job kind of came shortly thereafter. So it's very strange how you kind of put the pieces together. And one of the things that I've actually gotten asked more than anything is, don't you feel like you're using someone?
Oh, yeah.
Or don't you feel like you're using someone or being used? And to that I say yes. Yes. Humanity, interpersonal relationships, societies on a larger scale are all examples of human beings using other human beings.
Right.
That is how we relate to each other. There is a negative connotation in our society right now with the term using or being used.
Yes.
But I think we need to reframe that and say, as long as it's mutual using and it's done with eyes wide open and no exploitation on either side,
yes,
that is a useful relationship. For instance, me and my partner, I use him for sex, I use him for emotional security, I use him to help me get ahead in the world financially, and he uses me for all those things in return. We are very upfront and open about how we're using each other. When it comes to a client, there is a mutual usefulness. They're coming to me for relaxation. They're coming to me for conversation, connection.
Yes.
They're coming to me for therapy in some cases. I do have a background in massage and kinesiology, so I am a very, very good masseuse. So a lot of them do come to me for that, right? And it is, I am using them to build my business and get to where I want to go. And I am very upfront about that, not only in any of my advertisements, but in my screening process. So
okay. So why don't we get into like the sex work part of it? So like what type of sex work you do, and also like how you were able to branch that into like your own independent business.
Okay, perfect.
Let's do it.
So so I was 27 and I was working actually for a company doing rehab therapy. I was making fairly decent money, and this is what I went to school for. I've always been involved in the fitness industry or the therapy industry in some way. So I was doing essentially what I should have loved to do, but just at the end of the day wasn't feeling fulfilled. I still wasn't making enough money. So I remember thinking all of this stuff about being good at dating and being paid to date was the job. So I kind of took all that and started to do a little bit of research, and occasionally late at night, and looked into some escort sites, was like, nah, that's not my jam. Then kind of looked at Craigslist, and at the time, what was Air's List, I think, which has now worked into Leo List.
Right.
And found an ad on Craigslist that said they were looking for people to do erotic massage. And the thing that attracted me to this ad was the fact that it said it was independent, and that you were not required to do anything but essentially, at the end of the day, give a hand job. However you wanted to get there. Sex wasn't required, oral wasn't required, kissing wasn't required. It was as much or as little as you wanted. So I thought, I'll try that out. So I contacted the person who was behind the ad. It turned out to be a guy.
Of course,
and
it always is.
Yeah, of course, right?
It always is.
That's a whole nother thing. Don't even get me started.
Another thing. We don't have time for that.
Stay on track.
Let's do this.
Reached out, met him actually in a condo in downtown Vancouver. We sat down, we chatted, and he kind of explained the ins and outs. And at the end of it said, well, if you want to try, he's like, I don't know how much we can charge for you. So we'll start by charging $120 an hour and see how you do for a few days. By the way, we take 50%.
What? Oh my God.
Yeah. So
holy shit.
Me not knowing any better was still like, wow, that's like double what I make in my day job. Okay, let's try it.
Yeah.
So was set up in a condo in downtown Vancouver, and first shift I worked, I think I had 5 or 6 clients, and it was a little bit strange the first few, because of course your anxiety's high, you have no clue what you're doing, like any job, you're like, my first day, am I going to do well? Is this what I want to do? Is it wrong? All of those doubtful thoughts that you had, all of the childhood programming kind of bubbles up, and you have to really kind of check yourself and check in with who you are, reevaluate.
For sure.
But got through it and realized that not only was I good at it, but I enjoyed it. So I think I worked part-time doing that for probably 2 months, and kept my other muggle job and my PC life, and then realized that I was just, my head wasn't in the game for what I had been doing my entire life. This was definitely exciting. It was new. It was more in line with what I was looking for. So I quit my job and started working for this fellow full time, but very quickly realized that this fellow was essentially the equivalent of a pimp. He had a system where he did all the bookings. he put up all the ads. When I parted ways with him, which was about 4 months later, I realized, having done research after the fact, that he had about 15 or 16 girls that he was running, and he had a different phone number or app number for each of them, and he did all of the booking, pretending he was the girl, right?
Right.
Around about the time I quit my day job, I noticed bookings would suddenly disappear, or someone would show up and I didn't know they were supposed to be coming. So I was kind of like, this is weird. And one day he showed up at the condo I was working out of, drunk off his ass. And I kind of put two and two together and realized that there might be some substance abuse issues there.
Okay.
And he was a nice enough guy, not abusive, not really an asshole, just a basic bro. You know what I mean? Like very lost in his own way. And I guess this was how he felt he could make a decent income.
Interesting.
So anyhow, this is not how I do anything or have done anything in my life. So I sort of slowly started getting information from him, because I realized more and more often that when he would show up, even when he acted normal, he would be high or drunk.
Right.
And so I would, where do you advertise? Interesting, you know. And so I got my own little burner phone, and when I would see clients for the next 4 months, I would say, just so you know, I have a VIP number. Don't contact me on that other number. Here's my new number. And I would give them this number. So I started booking my own clients and kind of built my own little clientele.
Gotcha.
Behind
Smart.
the scenes.
Yeah.
Smart, maybe. After the fact, I was like, I don't actually know who he might have been affiliated with, but at the time it seemed smart.
Yeah.
And then 4 months in got to a point where I was like, I need to work for myself. This is so disorganized. It's very stressful. And I'd gotten a handle on what I was willing to provide. And one of the things that I realized in kind of these 6 months working for this guy was that the only thing I was interested in providing was erotic massage with body sliding and hand release, which is essentially a hand job. It's a nice way of saying a hand job. Mm-hmm. And the way I was able to come to that decision was I did have some moments where I was like, this guy's really attractive. You know, he wants a covered blowjob. Well, sure, he's willing to pay extra. I'll try that. Right. And just realized that it didn't cross my boundaries per se, but it certainly created a different relationship with the client that allowed them to believe that perhaps there was a more intimate experience to be had every time. It started with a hand job. This time she gave me a covered blowjob. Maybe next time, she'll let me dine at the Y or go down on her, Right. And for me, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a very specific niche service that people would come back for because it was therapeutic and because it did have all of the safety elements covered. Right. Which are, of course, no fluid exchange. Mm-hmm. Just the potential to have someone be more attached to you. And I do know a lot of guys who will go out of their way to look for a provider who will not necessarily kiss or do any of that because they do not want someone who might get the wrong idea on their end later on. Mm-hmm. So I did a little bit of trial and error and realized exactly what I wanted to offer and how I wanted to offer it. So those first 4 months, while I was working for someone else, were really instrumental in letting me realize what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. So when I left and went out on my own, I was like, okay, this is me and this is my niche that I'm going to evolve, or at the very least, see if I can evolve. Because I had at that point connected with a couple other girls that did erotic massage. A lot of them said the same thing, and that was, you can't just offer erotic massage. You're never going to be able to make a lot of money. Some people might just want it, but you have to upsell other things.
Really, really interesting. I love how you were able to find your niche and so fast too, because not every sex worker is going to realize that they have to do that. And I'm not saying you have to do it, but I find it is really useful and also a smart strategy.
It's a universal principle for any business. Mm-hmm. Find a niche and cater to that niche. first of all, what works for you and what resonates with you. Because
Absolutely.
if you can't sell it, no one's going to buy it.
Yeah, and you also don't want to like spread yourself too thin and trying to cater to every single fantasy and every single thing. Because one, it's exhausting. Two, like you have to really plan out your day if you're going to want to offer all that, you know? So again, like I personally don't offer everything under the sun just because I don't have the time and I don't have the capacity for that personally.
100%.
But whatever you choose is up to you.
Every single person going into any form of adult entertainment, whatever you are choosing to do, if you buy into the fact that this is what you want to do and you believe that I can make money doing this, and you ignore all the other people who say there's no way for you to make money doing it that way because they've never done it that way,
right?
You will be able to do it. And
yes.
That's a big part of honing your mindset when you go into this business. If you want to be in this business and you want to stay in this business, start telling yourself that, yeah, I'm fucking going to do that. You know,
yes.
just because no one else has done it doesn't mean it can't be done.
Yes.
Because if you buy into it, you start to believe it and you start to move towards that. And that was a big part of me distancing myself kind of from sex work, adult entertainment work as a whole, was because all I was met with was everything I was doing was wrong because it was slightly different. There's more than one way to skin a cat, always has been.
Yes.
And if you come up with a new, more efficient way to do that, you're going to be kind of reinventing the wheel and you're going to make money. You're going to succeed.
Yes.
So,
and we're definitely going to be talking about reinventing yourself later in the show as well. And as well as more like the mindset and stuff too. So stay tuned till the end. But let's quickly review some kind of client screening, session deposits. I know a lot of people like to hear about security when it comes to working independently. So if you can kindly go into that. And also COVID safety too. Like what are you doing nowadays to protect yourself? Let's talk about it.
Before we go into the day-to-day stuff, I will say that legally right now in BC, the way it stands as of today, it is legal for in-person sex work to take place. Okay. Assuming a few things are kept in mind and some criteria are met. And those are, number one, wear a mask. Yeah. If you are providing full service, stop offering kissing. If you are going to offer it, wear a fucking dental dam if you can. I know those are not usually used for that, but they can be. But really, if you're offering full service, consider just saying, you know, these are the reasons why. And I've lost clients because, I mean, I don't offer kissing, but simply asking them to wear a mask, which they would do if they went to see a physio, a doctor, an RMT. Really? Yes, unfortunately, that's what you would do anywhere else. Why would you think the situation would be any different? So the more of us that are willing to hold people to that standard, the better. If you are offering someone oral, if you're going down on them, make sure they're wearing a mask. You know, if they're going down on you, you wear a mask. There's a way to
protect ourselves.
Have that protection, right?
For sure.
And making sure that you're screening clients with a COVID-19 screening questionnaire. There is a downloadable PDF, a self-COVID screening. And I send that to every single client and say, read through this. Please let me know if your answer is no to all of the questions.
Right.
And they do. And what I do is I screenshot that and I save those because if anything does go wrong, I have a record. Whenever possible, another big one is the fact that right now we're not supposed to be visiting in home. Right. So if you're a provider, consider renting a space outside of your house. Rent a hotel. A lot of them are willing to offer you discounts, especially if you're willing to stay over the weekend. Look around, look at these options.
Yeah, lots of options available.
So those are kind of the three big ones. Another one is sanitization.
Yes, that's a huge one.
If you have a lot of furniture in your space that you're working, if you're not able to kind of set up a workspace with sheets or towels that can be immediately washed, try to cover furniture. You know, like I have a couch, I cover it every single session with sheets and they are removed and washed. Making sure you're sluicing down, washing down with something like Mr. Clean, your work surface, if it's a table, I wash any walls that might be exposed. I do have a bathroom facility available, so the entire bathroom gets washed from top to bottom. Those are the general things that we need to keep in mind.
So many great practices.
One of the things that I want to say is we can continue to work safely while being in a pandemic. You know, the world is opening up. There are a lot of people who are saying, oh, I don't want to change what I do because I might lose clients. My fear from day one has been, if I transmit COVID to one single client and that gets out, first of all,
not going to be good.
I'm done as a business. My clients are then put at risk. The public is put at risk. Potential legal action coming back at me, you know, all because I didn't wear a mask. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. The biggest part is the masking up.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake for sure. So like, I'm so glad you brought this up because like, it's been a while since I've done the COVID mini-series, and I just really wanted to bring this up because obviously like, a lot of us, we still have to operate. We still have to run our business within a pandemic. So I am so glad that you were able to really review and note these points and these practices that in order to ensure your safety. So thank you for that. But can we quickly also go over some client screening and session deposits and security on that front, and then we'll kind of go into boundaries?
Yep. So when it comes to my own clients, one of the things I started doing early on was screening. And one of the reasons that I started screening was because I didn't run into trouble, but I certainly had some interesting interactions and interesting things happen that made me realize that a screening process of some sort was necessary. And again, going back to the things that you're told you're allowed to do, quote unquote, versus what you're not allowed to do when you go into any avenue of sex work. I was told avidly by existing clients, by potential clients, by people in my own personal life, like friends who I felt comfortable confiding in at the time, because I didn't confide in everyone immediately, as well as other providers, was you cannot screen. If you start asking people questions, you're going to scare them away. You know, like it's client-based. This is not how it's done. And again, it was a matter of me having a lot of anxiety and worrying that I would lose clients, but also realizing that I needed to have some sort of security, safety, and my business needed to have some longevity, right? So one of the interesting things that happened was that when I first started doing this on my own and I branched out and had a workspace, is I ended up having issues with the landlord that I was renting a condo from at the time. And it was in a building that was not live work. And I had some nosy neighbors who I guess saw individuals coming and going.
Oh, no.
And so experience, as I say, is a stern teacher. And I actually ended up getting to a point where I saw a client who lived in the same building as me.
Oh, my God.
And he found my ad and he, you know, it was one of those moments where you open the door and your heart falls into and you're like, oh, fuck. And, you know, like, just what do I do? But I took the session and I dealt with it. And I did have some issues on and off with this initial landlord. They were quite abusive and quite nasty. And that's what eventually led me to Pivot Legal, which is a local Vancouver organization. They provide legal advocacy for sex workers, among other things. And they referred me to the fellow who is now my general counsel. And
cool.
He was,
awesome.
So I actively went looking for an advocate. I said, you know what? I'm not going to be intimidated. I may not be doing things 100% right now, in the sense that, yes, it is a space that was not meant to be used as a workspace, but I'm also not going to be harassed or belittled or have someone bully me because they perceive that I'm a woman and I'm in this space. And I was actually able to get my lawyer to not only get me out of the lease that I was in, but to eventually take some legal action against him. And it was just a cease and desist.
Okay.
But still, it's an example of what you need to do. So
for sure,
this whole instance kind of made me aware that, all right, I need to do some screening. So I came up with a screening process. The most common thing, I think, women who go out on their own is, how do I keep myself safe? Because the most positive things, other than maybe having an established client base, is some semblance of security, because there are people around who, hopefully, that's the idea, who would help you if something was to go wrong. So if you're out on your own, most of us don't have the option of hiring a security guard to stand in front of our door or let people in.
Yeah.
And even if we did, I don't know that clients would love that. So
no.
It's a non-starter. But there are things you can do. The first thing that I did when I branched out on my own was I had 2 or 3 really close girlfriends at the time, and I would always make sure that one of them was available, and I would inform clients. I would say, when they came in, I just need to check in with my security individual and let them know that I'm safe and that you're here. And so I would send a text to my girlfriend, and then I would send her another text when I received my donation. And then I would tell them that this individual will be checking in 5 minutes after the allotted end of our session time. And if I do not respond, they will be calling every minute on the minute for 10 minutes and then calling authorities just for my safety. And I would inform clients, it's not a fail-safe, because if someone's going to murder you or assault you, it would be done.
Yeah.
But what you need to realize too is that the people that want to do that, they are such a small percentage of anyone who would be looking for legitimate booked interaction. And they're looking for easy, right? They're really going to be looking for individuals that are on their own, probably in public. Bookings, even sending a text and being asked a few questions is usually too much work for those people. So that is leading me into how and why I screen now, because at the beginning, I would simply, ask them when they wanted to come, a specific time, verify what I offered, what I didn't offer, and verify my donation. And then they would show up and I would give them this spiel there about checking in, etc. And then I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't want to be seeing people who live in my building. I don't want to be put in an instance again where someone shows up and I'm like, oh, you're my neighbor. So I came up with a bit of a screening questionnaire that I ask all clients. So when a client reaches out to me and is looking for an interaction, messages me, another thing, and this is a really important point, because I know a lot of women do book via phone, like a phone call. Do not book via phone call if you can. I know some guys are like, oh, I want to verify you're a woman. I want to hear your voice. Blow past that, because if someone's already asking you to verify who you are, they're already subconsciously pushing your boundaries and trying to get the upper hand. They're showing you who they are.
Right.
They're showing you that they're going to be a little bit high maintenance.
Yes.
And that's not who I want. You want like-minded clients. Whoever you are, whatever your mindset is, you want someone who's like you, because those are going to be the people that keep coming back.
Yes.
Those are going to be the people that you have good interactions with.
For sure.
So, number one, if you can, put in your advertisement, I only book via text or email. And get a phone number and make sure it's a real number. Because right now in this day and age, we are in the era of app phone numbers. You can
There's so
download
many of
the
those.
app.
Yes.
Oh, and it's scary. Because as I will tell you, when we get into harassment, someone can create 12, 13, 30, 45, 50 phone numbers and pretend to be a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
There are apps you can use. There's a classified phone number lookup, I think is the name of one. And you can put the number in there and it will tell you if it's wireless connected through an IP address or if it's an actual phone number. Yeah. Now some numbers are private. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, this is out of area, because I've had phone numbers from Atlanta contact me, right?
Oh my God.
You don't know who the person is or where they've got this phone number, but you can go out of your way to find these apps that will usually tell you within a significant margin of error if it's an app number. And when someone messages, immediately what I'm telling them is, I'm so glad you reached out and my ad caught your attention, just so we're on the same page. I do not offer blah, 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 blah. I do offer this.
Yes.
My donation is this. Do you want to proceed? And then they can tell me, because then they have everything right off the bat. A lot of individuals don't necessarily read ads. They see a photo, they like the photo, they reach out. At that point, when you've reiterated your boundaries, to me, someone shouldn't be asking for extras unless there is a caveat where you say, in some instances, we'll offer fetishes or extras to certain clients, right? I do put a caveat in there and I say returning clients will be offered the option of blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, because they've been vetted already, so.
And then if the individual wants to continue moving forward right now, what I do is I provide them with my COVID-19 safety checklist. And it's basically, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And to that end, I wear a mask and I require all clients to wear a mask for the duration of the session. I do take temperature when you enter my apartment. I take temperature. I also require a COVID-19 self-screening, which I send an hour prior to the session. Anyone in law enforcement or bylaw or anything was ever to reach out to you, they can see that you've taken all the steps to not only do what you're doing to the highest possible level, but you're also doing it legally.
Yeah, so, you're protecting yourself.
Exactly. And then I send a screening questionnaire. Things I ask for are all the categories of information that I'm required to provide on any advertisement site. So if you're on Tryst Finder, if you're on Seeking Arrangements, if you're on Leo List, even if you're on Twitter and using that, most structured sites that are aimed at any sort of sex work or adult interaction are asking you for your measurements, your hair color, your eye color. They're asking you for your height, your weight, your ethnicity. We as providers put that out there. And of course, anyone can lie, but at the end of the day, most providers don't, because if we're saying we're a 6'3", blonde hair, blue-eyed woman, and they're showing up and they're finding, someone who's 4'11", they're not going to be pleased. So the information we're putting out there is how people select who they're going to come see. So for me, psychologically speaking, I want to be on a similar level playing field with any client.
For sure.
And that means asking them for all that commiserate information. So I do ask for age, height, weight, ethnicity. While screening is kind of a psychological safety step, because the more questions you ask someone, the more they'll reveal who they really are.
Right.
Or the more they will. I've had a lot of guys who blow up. They're like, I don't want to answer that. Okay, great. You've just screened yourself out of.
You're not seeing me.
Exactly.
End of story.
And that's going back to your point about how do you create a secure environment, a safe environment for yourself? Number one is use your intuition. Yeah. If something feels wrong, I don't care how perfect this person sounds. If it feels just a little off, don't have that client come over. Just do not do it. Or practice something which I call progressive overload, which is a psychological term. And that's the idea of asking more and more and more and more questions, because as you do this, a person's ability to hide who they are or what they're actually looking for is lowered over time, because people who just want a quick fix, they're not going to respond to more than one or two texts, right? And if you're asking them to actually provide information about who they are in kind of a written conversational form, people who are not your people are going to weed themselves out automatically. Right. So that is the biggest, I think, tool we have is use your psychology. Use the fact that, you are in a position of power in the sense that you decide if this person comes or doesn't come, right? Yeah. And when I say screening and asking these questions about height, weight, and all that, all good information. One of the biggest pieces of information I'm looking for is I ask them for their city of residence. And I ask them to specify, if they're in Vancouver, what part of the city. Are you in Kitts? Are you in Kerrisdale? Are you in Yaletown? Right? Okay. And a lot of clients will say Vancouver or downtown Vancouver. And I always respond with, I see that you said you're in downtown Vancouver. Just so you're aware, I do not see clients who reside within a certain kilometer radius of my workspace. That's for my own live work. Yeah, that's for my own live work. Well-being. Also, I like to avoid awkward interactions. If you tell someone, I like to avoid awkward interactions, they're like, oh, right, totally. I don't want that.
They're more understandable.
Much more likely to provide more detail, because if someone says they're in the downtown area, my follow-up question is, would you please provide 2 cross streets within a block to a block and a half of where you live, right?
Oh, wow. Very thorough.
And a lot of people will say, no, I don't want to offer. Okay, no worries. I don't feel comfortable seeing you without that. Thank you so much for being willing to converse with me. Have a lovely day. If you say that, oftentimes people will call your bluff and be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's fine. Or people will be like, I don't know why I have to offer that.
Right.
And I respond with, you are coming into my space.
Yeah.
You're not only going to be getting my address, you're going to be getting my unit number.
Yeah, all of this information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm coming to the center of the table with the info I'm providing to you. You also need to come forward, and we need to have some sort of a tentative trust.
Yeah.
So having that dialogue screening process back and forth is really important. And that's how I determined who I'm willing to see and who I'm not. And that's the biggest, I think, security step that you can take as an individual. Another big one is if you live in a condo building that allows the residents or owners, if you own, to tie into their closed circuit camera system. A lot of buildings do allow this.
Oh, wow.
You can actually, it's just like getting a Bluetooth number or whatever, and you're like, oh, it's network whatever, and you click on it and they'll ask you for a password, and you can actually see the cameras at the front or rear entrance of the building in a lot of cases. So that might also be an option.
Cool.
Yeah, it's worth looking into. Not all places offer it.
I would imagine not everything is going to be offered that openly. But thank you so much for sharing your very thorough security and screening process. Like, you mentioned a lot of things that haven't been said on the show yet. So thank you. And I really hope that these tips will help a lot of sex workers out there, especially if they're doing any kind of massage or full service sex work. This stuff is very, very, very applicable to that. I wanted to steer the conversation over to where your boundaries have been crossed. So I wanted to hear your story in regards to harassment and stalking and what happened there. If you want to go into it. If you want to go into it, it's up to you.
Well, yes. And that's actually, I think it's one of the more important things that needs to be talked about, because discussing harassment and stalking, which is obviously on a different level than just someone being bothered or irritated. Still, I think everyone in any sort of adult entertainment has had their boundaries crossed multiple times, probably again and again. I know a lot of girls who are strippers, and on a nightly basis, their boundaries are crossed. And while we don't call that harassment per se, particularly if it's just, oh, hey, can you give me another, can you give me an extra lap dance? Hey, would you like grind on my dick in the VIP, even if that's the sum total of what happens and it's as simple as saying no, it is still a form of harassment. And I think everyone has encountered it. I know that I've encountered it my entire life, since I hit puberty.
Yep.
So it's interesting, just as a thought, completely unrelated to what I'm about to say, how we normalize a certain level of harassment
as women,
which is really just that undercurrent of kind of misogyny and entitlement that certainly is still very prevalent in our world today, particularly in Canada and Vancouver. And we just normalize it. I
know.
Yeah, and I think part of it is just a safety mechanism, because if we don't normalize it, we would spend our entire day fixating on all of the times that our boundaries were violated, on an ongoing basis. So, and I say that because I think that everyone's encountered some sort of harassment or stalking.
Yes.
In some form. Particularly now we have all these keyboard warriors. So mine is my own story, but we've all had it. And I think it's no more or less significant or insignificant, no matter how intense or non-intense it is. But there are obviously cases where it becomes a little bit more extreme. And I've encountered everything from I've had death threats to my work phone. I've had people message pretending they were a client. And then as I progressively went through my screening process, this person started telling me how they had raped multiple women and they were going to rape me.
Jesus.
This particular instance, and this is why I will say I think it's really important for anyone in any line of adult entertainment business to have access to their own legal counsel or to legal advocacy if they need it. Because in this particular instance, I actually kept this guy talking for a while, got my lawyer on the phone as I'm texting with this guy, and we were actually able to report this person to the local police.
Wow. Okay.
We didn't ever find out if there was any follow-up, but at the very least, I was able to, through the anonymity of my lawyer, I was able to report this person. Because that's another big thing is if someone is harassing you, your biggest concern usually as a sex worker is, oh my God, is this going to affect my business if I go to the authorities? That is still such a ever-present fear.
For sure. So
I've had a harassment like that on and off to my work phone, to my email. But to me, that's some idiot who's having a bad day or who's just an asshole at heart, sitting behind his computer and just trying to throw pain out into the world. So those are more, I don't want to say ignorable, but they are. They're more kind of just like, oh, all right, here's an idiot,
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of those kind of interactions.
Okay. So what happened over here?
Pardon?
What happened with your harassment and stalking story specifically?
The instance that I actually had someone cross that boundary into kind of going from just being an asshole at the other end of a text message was actually an individual that I had dated and had a relationship with. And this takes me kind of into another area, which is maintaining your boundaries as a provider. Because maintaining that kind of client-provider relationship is very important, because when people come to see you initially, they're buying into this fantasy, this idea of you, so to speak. And it's very difficult psychologically, subconsciously, to move someone's mind out of the, oh, she's this fantasy, that I came and saw. So if you do kind of want to breach that boundary, best case scenario is you end up having a relationship with the person and it becomes real. And I've heard of that happening, but it's certainly a very rare exception, not the rule. Usually it ends up in, if not messy situation, you're at least out a client, or it can be very awkward.
Yeah.
And so relating to clients has always been professional. I did allow that boundary to be breached. I did. Actively chose to engage personally with a client. It was the first time that this had ever happened. And someone asked me out, and they were very adult emotionally about the way they did it. They were very, when I screen a client, I let them know that this will only be a professional interaction. And if they do at some point ask for more, they will immediately be fired as a client. So this person, had come and seen me once and then asked if they were able to see me socially. And he referenced that specifically that he was aware that I did not cross boundaries.
Okay.
But that he was wondering if in this case I would make an exception. He realized it was technically a violation of my boundaries, but here were all the reasons that he felt it was appropriate. And if I was offended, he was so sorry. I should just let him know. So there was a lot of dialogue, adult-sounding dialogue that went along with it. So I, of course, allowed myself to go out with this individual. I don't know, of course, but I did. And ended up actually having a dating relationship with this person for over a year. It was a great interaction in many ways, but looking back on it, having journaled and done my own kind of recap, I see all the instances where, there were little red flags. And those red flags came from, he had this idea or ideal of who I was. And as I progressively became more human and was just who I am on a daily basis, the relationship certainly didn't hold itself up to what he expected, which was, I think, a fantasy,
Right.
So we dated, we parted ways, and I will say for the for the purposes of this, because it became legally relevant, was he chose to break off the relationship.
Okay.
And I was heartbroken. I mean, no one's ever happy when you break up with someone.
Of course.
But moved on with my life. And probably about 3 months after we parted ways, I started getting emails from him. Initially, they started out as kind of him looking for closure and just his musings on our time together and all that.
Oh, gosh.
In my mind, yeah, and I was like, okay, this is nice, but I'm your ex, and it's not my job to be your friend or to help you through a breakup. So
yeah, and he broke up with you, so what the fuck?
Yes, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. People are strange. So I ended up blocking his email address. You can go into your Gmail. If most of us use Gmail or Proton Mail, you can actually create a filter to filter out specific emails, which I did not know. You can if you just block an email address, usually it'll still show up in your inbox or in some inbox, and you'll have to see it. But you can actually create a filter. So I went through and I did that. And he obviously had inner working of my work and what I did and all that. So I knew that he had my work email address as well. So I also filtered it out there. And at that point, it was just more a matter of realizing that I was over the situation and that I didn't really want to interact with this person socially or otherwise. You know, sometimes we have exes we keep as friends. This was not the case. It was over and done. So I I blocked him on a personal level, and then I started getting text messages, which when I didn't respond got nastier. As it got progressively worse, I ended up blocking his number to my personal phone, and this is kind of the point where it moved into what eventually became harassment. And I will say that establishing a pattern of harassment and or stalking is very challenging, particularly in this day and age where a lot of it can take place online. You need to collect a lot of data and kind of swim through a lot of shit before you're actually able to have enough information to supply the legal requirement or moniker of harassment. And it's not fun. It's not fun. It's certainly important to remember that if you're going through a situation where you are being harassed or someone is treating you incorrectly, the saving grace is in this day and age that if they're doing it digitally, there is a trail and you are able to screenshot or save emails, and you do have the proof after the fact, which is what happened in this instance. This individual did no longer have access to me or my personal contact information. So he started to reach out to me through my work.
Oh gosh.
Email and phone numbers. And at the end of the day, I think he ended up creating over 25 fake app numbers, and he would message me multiple times daily from one number, and then he'd scrap that number and he'd get another one. For 3 months, it ended up being, I endured daily text messages, everything from, you're a narcissistic cunt through to, you do know that you're a waste of space and you do nothing but take from society, and all of the worst things that we as sexy people think of ourselves, because that's the puritanical mindset that we've either been brought up with or the shame that's been put on us socially. All of the worst things. Obviously him having some inner workings of me and my business, and obviously me as a person, knew some of my insecurities and was able to throw that in there. So it was certainly stressful, and it was, people talk about PTSD, and I've always been like, to anyone who's suffering from any form of anxiety-related trauma or stress-related trauma, I have a tiny glimpse into what you go through just because of the mental and emotional strain that went on, and it's terrible. Eventually, what was able to give us kind of the precedence to move forward and to have some sort of action taken was the fact that he started referencing watching me on Instagram. He would say things like, I had my buddies over, we were watching you pole dance, you're such a fucking fat slob. And so at that point, I kind of looked at my social media and was like, I've always kind of kept the two really far apart, but now, this is someone who does know my personal self, what might they be doing with regards to putting information out in the world,
right,
on smut sites, on gossip sites, on slander sites,
yeah,
kind of violating my own boundaries by taking information that's personal and kind of making the connection between that and my sex work.
yeah,
Which, and this is another important point, you can be out and proud about your sex work. You should still maintain a persona that is in some way separate from your personal life, because there are people that just don't need to know what you ate for breakfast. They just don't need to know, where you go to the gym, or, that you went to the eye doctor today, right? And everyone has the right to have a private social media presence that's separated from their work social media presence, however that looks. So I do feel like people should be proud of what they do, but I do think we all have the right, and I think it's a right we should exercise, to kind of keep a little bit of distance, right?
The right to privacy, basically.
When someone chooses to violate that boundary for you, I mean, it's the ultimate mind fuck. So we found out that this person was all over my social media, and then when I kind of made it all private, would send me messages saying, oh, sucks that I can't watch how stupid you are, today, and that kind of thing. So we were aware over time that this individual not only was trying to watch me in other avenues of my life, but was also slowly, bit by bit, revealing who he was. From day one, I was 100% sure that this was that individual, but with references to our time together, to things that we've done, he actually identified himself without identifying himself. And that eventually led to having 3 months of recorded harassment. And we got to the point where we hit the threshold of, okay, this has crossed a line, and now we can legally take action.
Wow.
So,
oh my God. I am so sorry that you had to go endure that for, you said 3 months?
Yeah.
Like on a daily basis. Oh my gosh. I just can't imagine what that toll, like, that would take on your mental health.
It's a challenge, but I think the point at the end of the day is that it goes back to the instance I had with my landlord, to instances I've had with other potential clients who start to get threatening if I tell them that I don't offer this or don't offer that. Or
oh my gosh.
At the end of the day, we have those moments of anxiety where we're like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that could happen. One of the things that my ex-partner did while he was harassing me was he threatened to go to my strata and to out me to the strata. What you need to realize is none of this actually happened. So that's the important thing to take away from this. In my instance, was there were a lot of threats that were taking place. And from my end, not a single one has resulted in anything of it being true. But even knowing this, you have those moments of extreme anxiety thinking, oh my God, this is over. And for anyone who's gone through this, and I know some people in the Vancouver and the Lower Mainland sex work industry who have recently gone through more extreme stalking situations where people have tried to break in. And for those people who are having those moments of panic and that creepy sense that someone is watching them, just hold your head up and keep going, because that's what I did.
Yeah.
And find yourself legal advocacy. That is the big thing. And having someone that you can talk to. This is disgusting and despicable. So what needs to happen in order for us to take action legally is X, Y, and Z. Keep me posted. And in my case, it was waiting for there to be enough harassment ongoing to actually justify doing what we did, which was we sent a letter of cease and desist to him. And interestingly enough, this individual felt the need to respond, and he responded personally. And I'm going to say right now to anybody in any line of work, but particularly in sex work, if you ever receive an official letter from a law firm, and if it should have a letterhead, so look it up, make sure it's a real law firm.
Yes.
do not answer it yourself, ever. And that was a mistake that this fellow made, was he received a letter and he chose to answer it himself. The reason being, lawyers know the legalese. Yeah. And they are able to answer without a sense of emotional attachment. They're going to answer from a legal perspective. They're not going to give anything away. If you answer a letter yourself, you are going to kind of reveal more of who you are, and more of your bias in a certain situation. And that's what this individual did. And the day after this letter was sent to him, and then he responded that same day, the entire onslaught, texting, emailing, any online harassment stopped. So
I'm so glad to hear.
There is an end in sight.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think you need to realize when you're dealing with bullies, particularly with online bullies, because harassment takes it to a new level, but essentially these are bullies. These are people who are sad, they have their own stuff, whatever, and they're just using you as kind of an avenue to funnel their hurt and their sadness through. But what they're doing is they're not actually thinking logically or rationally. They're just threatening what they think will cause you anxiety. And usually it does. But again, it's a bluff. And just keeping in mind that when you do encounter these things, that it's not reality. It needs to be dealt with, but it's not reality. And that you just need to cut yourself some slack and find the people who can advocate for you legally and can also advocate for your mental health. You know, people who can just be like, this is fucked up. I'm so sorry you're going through this. You know, having one or two people like that, having someone who says, a therapist, a counselor who says, okay, yeah, you're going through this. Yes, this person's imposing it on you. But at the end of the day, you're still responsible for your own anxiety and emotions. So what can you do for yourself to, to retain your sanity?
Right.
So it's really important to have those advocates available to you.
I wonder, and I'm so glad that just ended after he was served with that cease and desist letter. Can you tell us a little bit about the aftermath in terms of did you have to make a new social media? Obviously getting new numbers. How were you able to reinvent yourself after that and pick up all the pieces?
Absolutely. And these are really good questions because I do feel like in a lot of cases, if you go through something like this, you don't even want any reminder of the situation. And that can be the persona or the name that you operated under. That can be the sites that you're using for advertisement. So one of the things that I did about 2 weeks before we served the cease and desist was we realized he was accessing all of my advertisements because he knew where I advertised. He was on all my social media. He would say things like, I have people watching you. So we weren't sure if there was friends of his that might have inadvertently been accepted as friends into private social media or if it was just a bluff. So I deleted all of my advertisements, and that was an advertisement cachet on 3 different sites that I'd had since I started my own business. So almost 6.5 years of advertising as one person, as one persona, also having that history of advertising and someone could look up, she advertised 2 years ago. She's been around. There is a history there. People could see the number of times my ad had gone up and the number of times it had been reviewed and the number of times it had been viewed. So that gives you a lot of clout in the sense that you're established, right? And I deleted all that, which ended up creating a little bit of a rift with regards to my in-person sex work for a while because I had quite a following. I was able to move client numbers over, but in the interest of discretion, obviously you're not going to be messaging, your entire roster of clients. That's not appropriate. So in a lot of cases, you don't know if these people are even going to, see a new advertisement, even if it's obviously you, even if it's some of the same photos, even if it's similar moniker. People used to look me up using a specific title. And if that's not there, then where are they going to go, right?
Yeah.
So it was certainly challenging.
For sure.
But it's not the first time that I've done something like this. And I think reinvention can be really cathartic because it lets you start from square one and it lets you apply everything you've learned to that point to kind of a blank slate. So what I did was I deleted that. I deleted my social media and I basically started it all from scratch. and just actively spent probably 3 or 4 months just sitting and populating things, posting ads, reconnecting kind of the rabbit trails of who I'd been before in some ways with this new persona that I'd created. So, making people aware. In my ad, it does say, I've operated under other nom de plumes, and I put it in there, right? So a bunch of people have found me and they're like, oh my God, I couldn't find you.
Yeah.
Where did you go? But one of the things that has happened in the last month and a half, the business is growing at a very, very fast rate, and I am getting more consistent new clients that are in line with kind of the business I run now, which is I've moved. I used to offer erotic massage, but I've also moved into certain fetish and domination niches.
That's right.
So that's also been a big part of the reinvention, is realizing that as I've grown and changed, I do want to offer other things because I'm a different person now. I am sexually aware of who I am and my sexual power and how I want to use that as kind of a new lens for therapeutic services. And so I've been able to kind of bring that in and fuse it all by basically starting from square one again. And I think that there is huge value in starting from square one because it lets you sum everything up and say, okay, this is where I was. This is who I was. This is what I was doing. This is everything that's happened to me. And I will say that this whole harassment experience, it forces me to learn, grow, and shore up all of my weak links, whatever those might be. You have to do an examination not only of your business, but yourself, your mindset, and you basically use it to like move you forward and create that new persona and to essentially reinvent yourself. So I have all of this new legal knowledge. I have all of this new awareness and confidence that, you know what, this is what I offer. This is how I offer it. If you don't like it, that's okay. There's a million other providers in the city and in the world, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I do and this is how I do it. And just re-honing that kind of attention to detail on kind of a new level. It's like I walked up 5 staircases and now, I've got this amazing long hallway of opportunity that I'm able to kind of utilize on a completely different level. I'm in the penthouse now, where before I might have just been, on the 14th or 15th floor, which is great.
I love that.
It's been a process, but I will say that instance, they say trials and tribulations make you stronger.
Yes.
And it seems like bullshit when you're in the middle of it.
Yep.
But when you go through, like when you reach kind of the next level, you're on a whole nother playing field. And it's opened me up as well to the fact that there's this whole world of digital content creation.
Yes.
And I've found a niche there as well and started to move myself online.
Yay.
Which has been,
yay.
Why are we not utilizing this internet world that's looking for, exactly what I offer? How many billions of people have access to the internet? So there's going to be a percentage of people who want you and what you're offering specifically because you have that look or you have that persona or you have that accent or you have whatever it is they're looking for. So it's actually been quite amazing. And of course, every day you kind of check yourself and you think, oh my God, what's the next bad thing that's going to happen? At the end of the day, Eleanor Roosevelt said, and I'm not a fan of her, but I love this quote, and that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And I think that anyone in the adult entertainment industry, keep that in the back of your mind, because the second you allow yourself to be catatonic or belittled or to make yourself small by the words of other people, the harassment of some asshole, no matter how intense it might be, it all starts with you, right? Like
absolutely.
You derive the power from the actual words. So
I love everything that you've said here. Seriously, and I'm so happy to hear where you've come, what you've gone through, and where you're going. It just shows tremendous growth. And I love that you are constantly reinventing yourself. Even now, as you said, there's this whole online market that's untapped. And I'm so glad that you are now taking strides to see that opportunity that is there, basically. So thank you. Your story was absolutely incredible. And I don't wish anyone to go through that at all. Like, I was just like, my jaw was just dropped. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. So
it is challenging, but
yeah.
I think, you can come through it. That's the
For
important
sure.
thing. And there are people out there who will help you,
Yes.
One of the important things I should say in this whole harassment situation, I did not once reply to any of these messages. And that was one of the saving graces that allowed us to actually take legal action, was the fact that I ignored. And so, a lot of people will just be like, oh, you're a whore, you're a bitch. And I'll just, you know what? I'm so glad that in this day and age, everyone's allowed to have an opinion. And I'm so glad that you feel comfortable enough with me, a stranger, to be able to send me something which is obviously a reflection of the hurt you're going through, and use it as a way to vent your negativity, and hopefully you feel better, and I wish you a wonderful day, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because what you do is, I've had people before who are like, oh, I guess you're pretty ugly. And I'm like, well, to you, I guess I am ugly. So yeah, you're right. Because obviously I'm not your taste. So there's nothing you can do. There's very little someone can do if you agree with them,
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all you need to do. You either need to be that black hole that just absorbs it and then like turns it into positivity and shits out glitter on everyone else who's around you, or
I love that.
you throw love back to them. And it sounds so fluffy and new age, but I swear it worked. And I've had people who have come back days later and said, I said a terrible thing to you. Not many, and this doesn't happen, but I've had complete and total strangers who said terrible things, and they've apologized.
Good.
And I just, like, you figure, and that's because you know who you are, and you're not willing to willing to react with anger or throw the anger back at them. So that's the biggest thing, is do not belittle yourself.
Yes.
By lowering yourself to kind of their level,
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm really glad you shared that. There's just a couple questions that came in here, which we'll quickly just go over, and then we'll wrap things up. So, first question here is, did the stalking incident traumatize you, and how are you healing?
Good question. So I'm loath to use the word trauma, because too many people in the world, just like I'm loath to use the word depression. There are people in the world who are truly traumatized.
Yes.
Like, have gone through hell. So the term trauma is not something I directly associate with what I went through. Extreme stress and anxiety that resulted in me feeling depressed and down and negative would be more of a way to characterize it. It is hard and it's challenging, and it's more of a mind fuck than anything to think this is a person that I truly cared about and loved, and they're sending these things daily. I don't deserve. Wow, where did this come from? It's completely, counterintuitive to anything this person ever said to me, So it's more that mind fuck place where you're just constantly defensive, and you're questioning yourself. Am I a good person? What did I do wrong? Oh, maybe I am these things, because you hear them often enough. So trauma, no, certainly a lot of mental and emotional anxiety and self-doubt. And what I did, apart from being sure I had the legal advocacy, because that in itself provides a lot of reassurance and provides you with a certain amount of ease. Because even if you're like, as was the case with my lawyer, when I originally took it to him, he said, honestly, we're not at a place right now where it would make sense to do anything, because we cannot involve the police. He hasn't, there's not enough of a pattern of abuse to establish harassment yet. So just keep documenting things and keep me looped in. Don't worry. Keep doing what you're doing. I said, well, he's threatened to go to my strata. He's like, well, if the strata has an issue, we'll deal with it then. But right now, it's his issue. So just relax. You're not doing anything wrong. Reiterating all the things we know, but having it from someone who comes from that place of knowledge and expertise, right? So that's number one. That was the biggest way I think that I dealt with it, is have that ongoing interaction with him, and also with Pivot Legal. There's a few people there who are sex work advocates.
Good.
Some are lawyers, some are not. But they all have a working knowledge of the legalese of sex work in Canada and in BC in particular. So being able to go to them and just say, oh, this happened today, or this is going on, or double checking to make sure that, oh, I'm still operating and this is the situation. Do you think that there's anything different I could do that would help to insulate me or my business? So making sure you have the avenues to like advocate from someone who is level-headed, because much as they'll feel for you, they're not going through your anxiety. So that's number one. Number two is having a support system. And in my case, I do have a counselor that I'll go see, and just sitting down and talking about what this meant for me, taking it away from, oh, this isn't fair. Why is this person doing this? I love this person. I'm so hurt, to, okay, this is happening. Why is this affecting you so deeply? Is there other underlying things that you might need to work on? How do you use this to reinvent yourself on all levels and make yourself stronger mentally, emotionally, physically? How do you use this as a way to take responsibility for boundaries that you allowed to be crossed? And this goes back to the fact that I said I have always had those boundaries of never crossing from client to personal interaction. That was a boundary I actively chose and allowed to have crossed.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean I deserved to be harassed. No one ever deserves to be harassed or abused in any way. But without being able to kind of face your attacker and, sit down and have a logical discussion, because these people aren't logical, that's not an option. We're not going to be able to sit down and get the closure we need from these people. So with that kind of gone, what do we have left? We have ourselves left. So then it's a matter of looking inside and saying, okay, well, what do I need to do to be sure this doesn't happen again? How can I take responsibility, if there is responsibility to be taken, so that I don't victimize myself? Because I will say, I was feeling pretty sorry for myself there for a while. And that is a natural thing. Have a pity party. But if you stay in that mindset of feeling sorry for yourself, you eventually become a victim in your own mind. And you act from that victim mentality of, oh, this happened to me. Oh, and it becomes more of a matter of looking for revenge. And it can definitely kind of bind your hands with regards to moving forward and healing yourself. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, great tips there. Like, you made some really, really awesome points, and really real points too. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I guess the last question here is, when or at what point should you get the police or a lawyer involved?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
For me, I have something called generalized anxiety disorder. I was born with it. It basically means I have a sense of heightened anxiety about everything. I'm slightly OCD. And so I've always been that person that wants to plan and try to sanitize any situation so that I'm going to encounter the least amount of anxiety from it at any point going forward. So for me, I had a lawyer already, because when I went into this line of work and encountered any sort of friction, I immediately was like, I need to be able to go to someone who knows me and believes in what I do and is able to advocate for me. So for me, it was imperative to get a lawyer early on in this business. It's interesting. I've spoken with a number of people about this, and everyone kind of describes a moment where when they're being harassed, or when someone is like accusing them of something, or when someone is being that keyboard warrior to them, where they're like, fuck, I wish I had someone to like intervene for me, like I wish, because obviously this person isn't hearing me, right? So the second you have a feeling like that, like, oh my God, this is bigger than me, this is really, stressing me out, like this person is just not hearing me, and you kind of go to that place of feeling like almost like a little kid, get someone involved, right? And with regards to a lawyer, I mean, I know money's usually tight for anyone living in Vancouver, because, hey, we live in Vancouver and it's expensive. And life right now in COVID is particularly challenging financially for a lot of people. But
Yes.
there are a lot of places out there where you can go for advocacy.
Yes.
Pivot Legal. Look up Pivot Legal. There's a number of phone numbers and emails that you can reach out to on their website. And you can speak to someone who knows the ins and outs of the sex work industry. They'll be able to explain the current laws. They'll be able to give you the details on anything. And that's actually how I was led to my lawyer. So
Right.
I would say sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Before you feel you really need one is usually the right answer. With regards to the police,
Mm-hmm.
if you are in any danger, I mean, call 911 immediately. I mean,
Yeah.
if this person ever showed up in my area, because we've served him with a cease and desist, if I was to see him on my street or in the area and he was to even walk towards me, I'd be calling the police, because that's the only way a cease and desist works, because
Yeah.
otherwise they assume you're not being serious about it.
Right.
But I mean, if someone is making you feel unsafe, I don't care if it's a client in the middle of a session, I don't care if it's someone you're going on a first date with, if you ever feel unsafe, call the police. When you talk about the legalese of sex work, calling the police is one thing, but having someone to advocate for you with the police after the police have dealt with the imminent threat, that's a whole nother issue. And I think that's why kind of knowing that law enforcement will come and will support you if you're in immediate physical danger is super important, but also having the legal person who's in your corner, because as we all are aware, the police can sometimes turn the situation around a little bit and potentially cause possibly some issues for you, even if you are the victim.
This is so true.
I think they go hand in hand, you know, absolutely. Make sure you are taking full advantage of law enforcement, but also make sure that if you have access to a lawyer or legal counsel, that you have that information with you, because if anything ever goes wrong in my life, I mean, my lawyer's the first person I'm calling.
Great.
He's there to have my best interest at heart, not just looking at the situation as a whole and trying to mediate between two people or mediate between me and the situation that I say happened, right? So it's they're two different sides of the coin, both necessary sides, but with regards to advocating for yourself, it's important to have, I think, have both, right?
Yeah.
They're two weapons in your arsenal.
Exactly. Awesome.
That is it.
That is a wrap. But before I let you go, where can we find you?
So I am on Instagram under the Hypnotic Hedanista. Feel free to add me. The account is currently private, but I pretty much accept everybody. And then I do advertise. I'm on Leo List again as the Hedanista. I do accept limited new clients right now for in-person sessions, assuming they pass my screening, of course.
Yes.
I do have an OnlyFans as well. I would more like to extend kind of the invitation. If there's anyone out there in the adult entertainment industry who's been dealing with anything with regards to legalese or business issues, I mean, I'm not an expert, but what I do have is I have some knowledge and some experience, and I do have some connections.
Yes.
And I'm happy to dialogue with you and certainly provide a bit of a support system. And then I do have obviously other resources that I could potentially direct you to. So if anyone needs to talk or needs support, if they reach out to you or if they want to find me somewhere, feel free to certainly reach out, because I mean, that's how we learn and lift each other up and move forward, right? So
yeah, I'll be sure to send anyone your way if they come through me. So thank you for being so open, and most importantly, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's incredibly intimate and also really raw, and I'm really glad that you showed all sides too, because oftentimes we will not speak too much about the harassment that we have to endure on a daily basis, but like in extreme cases like yours, where that can go and how to protect yourself further. So thank you for having this conversation with me, the Hedanista. It was so great to speak on this topic. I've been dying to speak on a topic like this, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me on, and thank you for everything you do
Thank
for
you.
our community, for connecting us. It's invaluable, right? Because I think we are all looking to kind of level up and
Yes.
be those business people. You know, we are the future kind of social change, because we're on that cutting edge of crossing the line between, you know, sexuality and religion and kind of all those taboo areas. So someone like you who connects us and puts our stories out there in such a professional way, that it elevates all of us. And I think that's the key there, the elevation. So thanks so much for having me on, and you are wonderful.
Thank you so much for the kind words. Honestly, the least I can do. But everyone listening in, don't forget it's Strip by Sia on Instagram, or my personal Sia Steph. Don't forget it's new episodes every single Sunday. If you want to like, rate, subscribe, share, write a nice pretty little review for me, that would be awesome. And that's all, folks. We'll catch you guys in for another episode next week. Bye. You're listening to Strip by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Dabburn.